Welcome to Gen Z Hoops, the Gen Z basketball, coaching, and sports business show.
What's going on, guys? I'm Ashton Khoorchand.
And I'm Brian Campbell.
And today we're joined by former Senior Director of Basketball for the Denver Nuggets, former President of Basketball Operations of the Washington Wizards, and longtime friend of the Sports Business Classroom program, Mr. Tommy Sheppard. Mr. Sheppard, how are you doing today, sir?
Ashton, I'm doing great. Brian, guys, thanks for having me on.
Oh, no, thank you so much for giving us this opportunity today. So I like to just jump right into it. So you're during your whole career, you made it to the, let's say, like top of the mountain and working in the front office in the NBA. But why every summer do you choose to come back and talk to students such as us in the Sports Business Classroom program?
Man, if you're going to be in the basketball industry, you're scouting talent all the time. And you come here, you watch players, you watch coaches, you watch trainers. You guys are the next generation of the great talent that's going to be in broadcasting. You want to know all the names that are coming up. If someone leads the organization, you have to have a depth chart of every single person in that space. And you want to know the stars ahead of time, if that will. So it helps me. I like to come meet people. I love to share wisdom that I have, but it takes a lot of, for me, it's so much fun to meet young people coming up and want to get into this industry.
Yeah, most definitely. So during our lectures, Mr. Bobby Marks, he also worked in the front office as well, and he's told us about like the rigorous schedule that you guys have when working in the NBA. Can you talk a little, but I would like to focus more on like your free time and like your off day schedule. What do you like to do during your free time away from basketball?
You know, I have a big family, and I spend most of my time with them. We have horses and dogs and a lot of chickens and ducks and stuff. We kind of live out in the country, so we take care of a lot of property and a lot of hiking, a lot of walks, a lot of swimming. We got paddle boarding, things like that. We like to be outdoors. But, you know, when we get a chance, really, I like to travel. And off days, you don't get too many of those. So whenever go on long trips, scouting trips, if you go on, you know, across the country doing college tours and stuff, I always schedule in a day or two just to relax, go see the locals, go out and see, get a chance to catch up with some of the college people that you know, schools of business, schools of PR and stuff like that. But I really enjoy teaching other people when I can. So when I go to colleges to scout, off day, I usually go and try to seek out a little of that.
Oh, that's amazing. Where would you say like your favorite place that you've traveled so far is?
This year?
Yeah, this year. Let's start. Let's take that.
I would say probably I'm going to Cuba. I was with USA Basketball. We went down there for a FIBA qualifier. I'd never been before, so it was very, very unique for me.
Wow, that's amazing.
All right, Tommy, I'd love to hear about all your personalized stuff. I do want to ask you a question about your NBA career. I believe you, correct me if I'm wrong, I believe you started as the the Senior Director of Basketball with the Denver Nuggets. I just wanted to ask you, first of all, how did you get into that position? And then what's the most rewarding part of that job for you?
Well, actually, I got into with the Denver Nuggets as a PR director.
Oh, okay.
I came from UNLV, actually. I used to work here as a sports information director, and got an opportunity to go to the Denver Nuggets, and I sprinted. That was the dream of my life, was to play in the NBA, and I always said I'm going to be in the NBA one day. So I got a chance to do that, and you got to understand the people that you're meeting right now, your peer group, you're going to see them the rest of your life. So the first people I interviewed with when I walked in the door was Bernie Bickerstaff, who's the GM, and he's still, to this day, a surrogate father to me. His son, JB, known him since he was a ball kid for us. And JJ Outlaw, who's now an assistant coach for the Nuggets, for the Wizards, he was one of our ball kids. And the other guy I interviewed with was Tim Lewicki, and Tim's one of the most prominent people in the sports entertainment business. Small world. You know, you met those people. I met them back in 1994, and here we are, 2024, and still interacting with them all the time. So I think to get into that space there, I was very fortunate for sure. And then I just kept wanting to grow. And that was my biggest message to Bernie, to everybody that I ever worked with, is that, hey, what are the jobs nobody wants in the organization that you need to get done? I'll do them because I love this stuff. Yeah. And I really wanted to run a team. I knew that in 94. And, you know, it just takes time. And if I never got there, I wasn't going to bitch about it. I really enjoy what I was doing all along the way. I think the most rewarding by far are the relationships. You know, the games come and go, playoff wins, missing playoffs, all those things. There's highs and lows, and there's never enough enjoyment of the high times, and the low times are probably too low. But I think the relationships along the way by far the most rewarding.
Makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, most definitely. So, since we're on the topic of like the jobs that you've done early on in your career, we are at UNLV, and you have done a lot of work with the legendary coach Jerry Tarkanian. Can you talk a little bit about the work you've done with Coach Tarkanian and your experiences with working with him?
You know, that was just such an honor to work for. At the time, he was the all-time winningest coach in history and just won a national championship in 1990. I got here in '91, and you know, every time I come here, I'm very inspired by Las Vegas for what it meant in my life. This is where I met my wife. 31 years later, 7 kids later, we're still together. She swam at UNLV. I worked here with Coach Tark when he had an assistant coach named Tim Gergerich, who's by far the godfather of player development in the NBA. We've done a camp together for over 30 years out here with NBA players. Then I actually worked for Rolly Massimino, too, and Rolly had an assistant coach. My wife used to babysit his kids before we were married, and to this day he's one of my closest friends, Jay Wright. So I met a lot of key people back in 1994. Changed my life. 91 to 94 here working in Vegas. I met people that I'm still with to this day that were some of the biggest influences in my life.
It's amazing.
So your predecessor, Ernie Grunfeld, before you were the GM of the Wizards, he was there from 2003 to 2018, I believe. When you got thrust into that position as the interim, how did you feel about getting that position in that way? And then how did you put yourself in the right position to keep that going forward?
Well, you know, I was named the interim, and the ownership group gave me the opportunity while they're going to do a job search to run the draft, ran free agency, and just kept running it out. So I figured I'm not going to worry about the people trying to get this job because I already had it. I was doing the work, and it worked out tremendously. It was a great opportunity, a great run. We didn't get enough wins. Scoreboard doesn't lie, and then somebody else is in that position now, and I wish them the very best. I'll always be a huge Wizards fan. The people that run their organization now are dear friends, so I'm always pulling for them. Very grateful to Ted, but I think when you're trying to get a job of that magnitude, you really just have to keep doing the job. I mean, it sounds a little trite, but I just think don't mix it up. It's really managing people, making sure you're getting more talent into your organization. Everybody has role definition, and everybody has a spirit together that, hey, we can accomplish great things. It's a wonderful, wonderful league, full of a very competitive people. And you know, I look back at 29 straight years in the NBA, and all you really do remember the relationships, the fun times that you had.
Do you feel like you could have done more had they given you a longer tenure?
You know what? I don't dwell on that. I always just focus forward. You know, the results always, it's all relative to what the expectations were. And I know that we suffered a lot of injuries, and nobody cares. You just got to keep moving forward, and not an ounce of bitterness in me. I'm just grateful.
Yeah, most definitely. So on the subject of building a staff full of smart and talented people, you've said before that you might have a team that looks good on paper, but the game is played out there on the wood.
Yes, sir.
So how important is this ingredient to what winning looks like at the end of the day?
Well, I think by far the most important ingredient when you're scouting anything is competitiveness. And really, character and competitiveness are right there hand in hand. In the NBA, there's a long season, and it takes a lot of energy from a lot of people to get you to the last game of the year, to get you to the playoffs and beyond. And I can't stress enough, competitive players who have high character. You might not win with great people, but you sure you're going to lose without that good character, without great people, I promise. And I think as this business, as we continue to evolve, we are doing a much better job in front offices and with medical staff of providing mental performance opportunities for players. And I think that's the biggest space in the NBA that I think it's going to still needs to be better, but it's gotten a lot better than it was. Mental performance is helping players actualize who they can really be, and I think it's helping coaches. I think it's helping everybody in the front office, and I salute Adam and everybody in the NBA that's really pushing for that.
Yeah, most definitely. So you know how there's this new rule in the NBA as of this year where players have to play at least like 65 games, I believe it is, to qualify for like a MVP, Defensive Player of the Year. Or going back to that aspect of mental toughness, what do you think about that new rule?
You know, it's collectively bargained for, and you got to understand what things you want to give energy and oxygen to. It's done. Embrace it. It's not changing. You know, I don't think that players want to miss games. I think sometimes you got an eye towards we want to get, you know, different expectations. Some players know, hey, we want to play into June. if I miss a couple games here and I get my rest and I can get my body right, then we can keep going. Unfortunately, it did cost some players this year.
Right.
But that was collectively bargained for. Players voted on it. NBA voted on it. So I don't really think there's much to talk about moving forward. I think if they want to try to move that around, that's going to have to go back to discussion. But something like that, I think, was a reaction to, as you can imagine, especially if you're a fan on the road and you want to see Steph Curry and it's the only time he comes through town and he's resting that night. That happens enough times. Fans start to get a little itchy. Right. And fans vote with their feet. And you don't want people not coming to games because they don't believe stars are going to play. And there's some players, they just happen to take nights off in certain towns their whole career that town's never seen them play. Fans know. So I think that rule was kind of a reaction to that. It might have probably been an overreaction. I wish it could get overcorrected, but I'm a big believer what the rules are, and you embrace them and move on. I don't really put a lot of editorial on it.
Yeah, most definitely.
Do you have any hot takes on the new CBA, whether it's good or bad? Or
I tell you what, I think people are still digesting it. I think it's going to be ultimately, if you were to forecast in a few years, there's going to be still a lot of players at the very top making all the money, and everybody else is going to have to figure out how to get by with the rest. I think a lot of players in the NBA have to manage their expectations of how much they're going to get, and trying to compare their opportunity moving forward with somebody else's contract they signed 3 years ago is pointless. It's a different CBA. So I think it's great to see players make as much money as possible. It's a player league. My entire life, I'm so grateful to NBA players for everything they've done for me, for my family. And you got to understand, players usually play about 3 years in the NBA. And that if you can build generational wealth, they got that for the rest of their life. Most of the rank and file in the NBA don't have it like that. So I want to see them get as much money as possible. But I think this new CBA, people are still digesting it. But you're going to see an awful lot of players, I think, have to decide, do I really want to leave town for an extra X number? Or here I'm being celebrated and there's a path for me to retire in this uniform in this city. It's always kind of been that way, but now I think it's going to be a lot more pronounced because the money disparity is going to continue to grow. There's going to be a lot of money at the top, and the rest of the guys are going to have to get by with what's left.
Yeah, you definitely have to figure out whether you want to get that top-end money or do you want to win. So you got to figure out that balance, I guess.
I think the hardest part is going to be when you have to make decisions. You could see some of the teams went through it this summer where someone's got to go.
Yep.
And that's going to break up a pretty good thing. And I think when you do something like that, you hopefully have someone in place that can maybe fill in. Mm-hmm. It's very difficult because when you have to break up a team after a long run together, that's never fun.
Yeah, most definitely. So when I was doing my research on you, I heard you had a really interesting story about Muhammad Ali and the Olympic torch. You can tell that story, please.
Well, no, I was in '96 at the Olympics. We were playing China, actually, and I got an opportunity to escort Muhammad Ali and his photographer in a golf cart at the Georgia Dome from one side to the other, and they presented him with a gold medal that he had thrown into the river, supposedly back in the day. But, that was my hero growing up. My number one athlete in my life was Muhammad Ali. Number 1B was Julius Erving. But those two were the most influential athletes in my life. So getting a chance to meet him, and even in '96, it was unbelievable. But he lit the torch that year. And just such an inspiration. And he spoke to Team USA. I spent time with them, but he spent a day with Team USA before we played. And just everybody that would interact with him, it was like we were all little kids again. Get a chance to meet the greatest player, the greatest boxer in history, one of the greatest humanitarians in history. That you don't get those opportunities very often.
Well, that's amazing. Would you say, like, all the adversity that Muhammad Ali had faced during his lifetime and all that he overcame, like, helped motivate you and propel you to where you are today in life?
I think you take lessons from everybody. There's a lot of things that he went through I could never possibly relate to. But I have empathy for his situation and the legacy that he's left and inspired so many people in so many countries around the world. He was negotiating releases of hostages. He was helped freeing people everywhere in the world at one time. I mean, that's far supersedes being a boxer. And I think you can take a lot of lessons from his legacy for sure. It did inspire me a great deal, but some of the things he did, I don't even think anybody could possibly relate to.
Most definitely.
What kind of advice do you have for young guys like us trying to break our way into the NBA world or just any sort of sports medium what kind of advice do you have for us trying to get into that?
I think you guys are doing it right now. I would tell you to be as active as possible, pursue every single opportunity that gives you an opportunity to get on a platform and get your repetitions like you're doing. This is critical for you. I would tell you to be very kind, to be very, very much of a volunteer at events like this. You never know what's going to spark your interest. If you're going to go into this area right here, you better know the business of the business you're in. You better really, really study the news, see what players' transactions, if it's going to be basketball you guys want to pursue, know the business you're going to be in, because it's all the time you're going to see something new is going to be on the horizon, right? So you just talked about the CBA. Now there's a lot of free agency stuff that's just about to end. So what usually happens towards the end of the summer in the NBA, it's another mini trade season. After everybody went through the draft, after they went through free agency, now they got to look at their roster and say, do we really want to go to the next season with this roster? Do you want to add somebody else? So stuff like that, I think you can learn simply by being really, really curious, reading, seeing what's out there. Being informed is everything to me, and you can't rely on social media to be informed. Go out, get your firsthand sources, talk to people all the time, but it's a relationship business. And I'm going to tell you both, you're going to see each other if you're going to be in this business the rest of your lives probably. So you want to build strong relationships and keep up with each other.
Very cool. I guess I have one last question for you. Out of everybody, all the players that you met during your time in the NBA, who are some of your favorites that you've been able to meet?
It's like asking me for who was my favorite kid. They're all my favorite. I've dealt with so many just unbelievable. I've been blessed between working with the Nuggets, working with the Wizards, all the players with the USOC or with the USA Basketball. You know, there's just too many to count, too many to say. There's some guys I really spent an inordinate amount of time with. Mahmoud Abdul-Rauf, Antonio McDyess, you know, Gilbert Arenas, Antoine Jameson, Caron Butler, John Wall, Bradley Beal. You know, those guys are very special. But there was tons of other people that touched my life. I was with Andre Miller this morning. He was with us for a short time. Unbelievable. Paul Pierce, different vets that we had. Anthony Gill, you know, and now I'm looking and saying, oh, man, I'm going to leave off this guy, this guy, this guy. There's so many players. I think what really inspires me is to see players when they come into the league and now they're coaching, like Bobby Jackson. You know, Bobby was a rookie for us, one of my favorite players ever in Denver. And now he's been an assistant coach. He's with Nick Nurse, who's a dear friend in Philly. And seeing that is very gratifying to see somebody's whole career arc kind of go to where he ultimately wanted to be. So don't ask me that question again, because it just puts me, it's hard, because I really do. I've been very blessed with great players, really have.
Very fair answer. Thank you so much, Tommy, for your time. And thank you to the Summer League for letting us do this.
Absolutely. Thank you, guys. Good luck.
Thank you. Really appreciate it.
Thanks for listening to Gen Z Hoops. Make sure to follow, like, and subscribe on Instagram, LinkedIn, and all major social media platforms at Gen Z Hoops. You can tune in and subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, and every other podcast platform on the planet. Get ready for the next episode.